I was gonna do a fun little video to make a return of sorts, but then this shit happens. Jesus Christ. So it appears that Sony is back to its old habits, as it has now officially came to light in that the whole Spider-Man deal between Marvel Studios and Sony is officially done, and that they are not going to be extending the contracts. Which pretty much all but confirms the fact that Spider-Man is going to be taken away from the MCU entirely. And this might also explain on why there was no official announcement on Spider-Man 3 during San Diego Comic-Con. Now, according to Deadline's report, the initial new deal would have consisted of Disney having at least 50% of the stake in relation to all of the Spider-Man movies, both from the MCU as well as the Sony-owned films. And in doing so, they could have easily implemented the Sony-verse into the MCU proper. So in other words, this new deal would have made it possible for Venom to be implemented into the MCU alongside the rest of the cast that would come out of the Sony's Venom-verse, if you will. However, it does seem like history is repeating itself because Sony are being greedy as fuck, and because neither Disney or Sony could think of anything to negotiate with on time, the whole Spider-Man deal is officially done, and that Sony will be dragging Spider-Man out of the MCU. And as for the other Spider-Man movies that were still in the works because of the deal, since Far From Home made over $1 billion at the box office, Sony are pretty much obligated into making 2 more Spider-Man films featuring both Tom Holland and Jon Watts as the director. Although it has been stated in the reports in that Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios will not be hands-on with those next 2 Spider-Man films, which means that maybe they could be implementing Tom Holland's Spider-Man into the Venom-verse, despite the fact that the deal prevents them from carrying Tom Holland into the Venom-verse that they're working on. Believe me, I know that this is a huge clusterfuck. And believe me, the greed coming from Sony will backfire on their faces within a matter of 5 years or so. Because it's pretty much common knowledge at this point that Sony films have been flopping for the past 5 years or so. And the only successful property that Sony has going for at this point is Spider-Man, which even then, this mainly stemmed to the fact that they were playing ball with Marvel Studios to begin with. And with the new revelations, it's going to go all downhill from there for Sony, and that they're just going to get completely done for. And as much as it sucks for the MCU to no longer have their own Spider-Man, at the same time they don't really need Spider-Man to remain on the top of their game because they do have the likes of Black Panther, Captain Marvel, and even the Fox-owned properties like X-Men and Fantastic Four to carry on moving forward. Sony on the other hand have their own Venom-verse, which despite of Venom, I think the whole universe is going to collapse onto itself. And they can only squeeze Spider-Man for so long before things become dry and people will eventually grow bored of the Spider-Man IP. And when that happens, Sony will have nothing to latch onto to the point where they're probably going to get bought off by another company altogether within the next 5 years or so, and by that point, after they get bought off, the rights to Spider-Man will be going back to Disney. And on that day where Marvel Studios and Disney officially get all of the rights to Spider-Man once more, by then I could imagine them completely recasting Spider-Man once again, or they're just going to go the Miles Morales route. I can't deny that this whole situation between Sony and Disney is a complete piss take, but given Sony's track record with their greed, it doesn't really surprise me, and I am expecting Sony to crumble harder than they did back in 2014. And where Spider-Man goes from there in terms of movies, God knows what's going to happen, but either way, the future does not look as bright as it once was for the Warcrawler. So what are your personal thoughts on Sony not extending the contract with Marvel Studios? Do you think the MCU will not be the same without Spider-Man, or are you glad that we might eventually get a completely different incarnation of Spider-Man moving forward? Comment below and share some thoughts, and as always, thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, take care and have a good one.